I cannot terminate that. I've checked. Welcome to Beers with Bill. It's my pleasure to welcome back our resident Belgian beer expert and wine connoisseur, Cam Bartel. Cam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What beer are you going to start with tonight?
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me back again, Bill. I guess things didn't go as badly as I thought with our wine experience. I was a bit worried. We're starting today, folks. If you are, depending on what you went with at the LCBO, if you have found anything, we're going to go with this guy here, the Blanche De Chamblee. For those of you who had it, great. If you have anything, if you do not have this beer and you want to kind of play along at home with a comparable version, Hoegaarden would work. Derek, I think you mentioned New Limburg. New Limburg is what I actually wanted to get for this as a product, the LCBO, because for some reason they told me they're changing seasons and didn't have the New Limburg wit in stock, which made no sense to me at all because like it's a summer beer. I don't know what they're thinking. Anyway, so long story short, they didn't have it. So we'll talk about that a little bit briefly, but yeah, so any type of Belgian wheat beer would be ideal. If you don't have one of those, German style wheat beer might be comparable. If you don't have one of those, Bud Light. Cool. Salud, everyone.
Salud, Cam. Why Blanche De Chamblee?
Yeah, Blanche De Chamblee. First off, for those of you who will be joining us later for the dark beers, I would recommend taking the 2 dark beers out of the fridge right now and just letting them come up to temp a bit. Just leave them on the counter, put them on a place they won't leave rings, that kind of thing. They're usually better at about maybe 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. So just for later, if you are so inclined. Yeah, I picked, well, I wasn't sure what to talk about initially, Bill, so I thought I'd just have a quick recounting of some stories of my beer past, why I drink beer, things like that. I think you've kind of touched on that even with yourself in the past of, you know, how your first beer, you managed to drink a third of it or something like that. I'm in the same boat. My first time ever even smelling beer was, I lived in the country growing up. We would walk along the side road and pick up beer cans and beer bottles to return to the LCBO. So my first aroma of beer was 6-month-old Canadian in a ditch somewhere, which that smell kind of sticks with you, quite pungent, if you will. So that was my first introduction to beer. I never thought I would ever enjoy it. First time actually having a beer was when I was working at Mongolian Grill, actually in undergrad, I think, and I managed to throw down a whole half pint of ice cold Canadian. That's as far as I made it, and that's what I thought beer was. I'm like, okay, well, you know, beer isn't for everybody. I'll just stick with my Smirnoff Ice or Mike's Hard, and we'll call it a day. And then my first time actually enjoying a beer was, I think, around like the time I found Waterloo Dark, back to the old recipe. For those of you guys who remember before things kind of went a different way, the old recipe was kind of my favorite. I think who was it? Katie, you mentioned you got the left goblet you're drinking out of tonight as well. Left Brune I had on tap just randomly one time. Excellent. First time I tasted chocolate in a beer. And then things like Fruly and Mort Subit. You guys have ever heard of that? Those are Fruly, of course, the strawberry beer. It's hard not to like a product that is 25% strawberry juice. Definitely a bit of a cheater there. Mort Subit, the ones this is going back about, 10, maybe 12 years ago when they would get the corked bottles in, like the raspberry corked bottles into the LCBO. I kind of found those out. Then I realized there's a bit more to beer than just old Canadian, I guess is the way of putting it. Why I picked this guy is it's kind of a Belgian style. I would argue that when I first got into Belgian beers, I think Unibrew was one of the best Canadian producers of Belgian beers. They've since got a bit more corporate. They got purchased by Sapporo, aka Sleeman's, aka whatever, I don't know. But going back historically, they kind of like hit the nail on the head with some of their products. So I picked this one. It's a pretty good example of a Belgian wit. I don't think has anybody ever done a thing on wheat beers, Bill?
No.
Okay. So my first kind of go-to beers that I really got into were Belgians and wheats, German and Belgian wheat. So those two countries for me make the best wheat beers. The notable differences I like to call them are going to be your banana clove palate versus citrus coriander. Germans aren't allowed to cheat in their beer making. They have the Reinheitsgebot, which dictates that they can't add anything to the beer. So all of the off flavors, or some people would call them undesirables, like your banana notes, certain esters from the fermentation process, are only due to the actual yeast. Whereas in Belgium, they don't have any law dictating what can be called beer. So they'll add actual curacao, coriander. Those are your base note flavors for a Belgian style wit. Generally, I find them to be a bit more lighter as well, a bit more like a straw color, whereas the Hess and the German style look a bit, actually, it's hard to tell for the white here, but a bit more like a darker orange color. Anyway, so I just kind of fell in love with wheat beers because they were very light, they're kind of fruity, they're a bit yeasty, a bit bready as well. They're unfiltered, which kind of feels more natural kind of deal, less synthetic. So that's kind of why I picked this guy anyway. Anybody have any thoughts about this beer so far? Some people like wheat beer is a bit polarizing. Like Bill, I almost wanted to pick Hoegaarden just to make you drink a whole pint of it because I know you'd love that.
Absolutely. I drink Hoegaarden too slow to enjoy a whole pint.
Yeah. I don't really dabble in the wheats a whole lot, Cam, but how do they typically age? Like, I'm looking at a bottle here I bought last summer, and it's almost tasting more like a sweet apple juice kind of thing. Like, I'm not getting any of the typical wheat notes. So I'm just curious what your experience is.
What's the percent on it, and what's the brand?
It's the Newlenberg. It's 4.8.
Yeah, that's a low percent to age. I would say things.
I didn't mean to age it. I just have too much beer, so.
Accidental aging. I got you. Okay. I would say
the best before is only 2 weeks ago. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely drinkable. What I find normally is that you lose the suspension of the particulate in about 6, maybe less than 6 months ish. So then you kind of lose the suspension of the wheat particles, kind of give the mouthfeel as well. So it might be a bit more clean tasting and then less viscous possibly. However, that being said, there's a guy there in the chat with a purple shirt, a gray shirt and a black hat, with whom I share a love for high alcohol wheat beers, things made by Schneider, Aventinus, things like that, things that are ice box that are 8 or 9%. Those guys will age a bit. You're gonna still have when you do open them, you got like a pile of sediment on the bottom that turns into a cake sometimes. So you can go a bit too far, but I definitely have aged wheat beers. I currently have some downstairs. I personally find that for anything like a light wheat beer, it's like an IPA. You want to drink it sooner than later, personally, IMO. Yeah, so going to Derek mentioned New Limburg. That's a great brewery southwest of here. I see somebody else nodding their head in the chat. That's great. Good to see. I've been there a couple times myself. They are from, I want to say, the Flanders area, possibly part of the Holland side of things. I don't know exactly where they're from, but they do make an excellent Belgian style lineup. Their wit is fantastic. They make a double or a double and a triple as well, I believe. They're a very cool location, only about 45 minutes or an hour from here, right on the way to Turkey Point. I really wanted to promo them tonight because they're a cool place. But like I said, the only one I could find in the LCBO was the Grisette, which is not quite the style I was looking for tonight's tasting, unfortunately. But yeah, check them out sometime. They're in an old school, like a public school. It's a really weird place. I don't know if anyone's ever been there or not, but when they first opened, they had all the kids' washrooms, like used to be for kids. They'd have all the urinals except for one removed kind of thing. They have this empty wall of old plots that they had. Anyway, cool place. The beer is good and their food is actually quite decent as well. Anyone hasn't been there.
Cam, Graham's kind of curious what you would precede a wheat beer with and what you would follow a wheat beer with if you were mixing your beers up.
Precede?
Yeah, what would you drink before a wheat beer?
Oh, I got it. I would go with something even lighter. So I would go with either a fruit blend, possibly. You could go with maybe a sour as well, or even something like a pilsner for pre, because these are very light, right? It's almost like if your food pairing, I would, you want to follow your kind of go step it up. So that's what we're doing tonight as well. After this, we're going with a Duvel, aka Duvel, aka dealer's choice on pronunciation. So something a bit heavier as far as the alcohol content goes, a bit more punch you in the face kind of thing, but still on the light side. If anyone got it, did anyone actually manage to get the Duvel today or not? No. Too bad. Oh crap! I was hoping that wouldn't be the case. It seems like when I went to I went to the store a couple months ago to see what was available for this tasting, and they had Duvel there, and they had other stuff there. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't make my list now because it might not be there. So I went back 2 weeks ago, and I found, like one of everything. I'm like, this is horrible. This is like worst case scenario. So I tried to give you guys hopefully some other options, but anyway. So yeah, next one we're having is Duvel. Do you want to go that way now, or do you want to? Where are we at for time, Bill?
We should probably switch over to the Duvel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. For those of you, is anyone here familiar with Duvel? Ever seen it before? I'm gonna forget my bottle opener. Hold on, I'm a noob. Duvel is yes, very good, Remy, very good, witty as always. Love to see it. Duvel is a relatively, I would say, a relatively unique style when it comes to Belgian beer. It's almost like a standalone. One of my books that I picked up a long time ago about learning Belgian beer was written by Michael Jackson. Not that Michael Jackson, the other Michael Jackson, but this guy right here. He's like considered to be a really well-versed beer scholar. He used to travel the world. So Michael Jackson classifies only few beers into the category of Belgian strong. This is one of them. So Duvel, the glass looks like a fantastic chalice like that. It's got really good head retention on it. Very clean, crisp beer. For me, I would call it, if you're looking to compare it to a style you may be familiar with, it's almost like a Pilsner for crackheads is what I would call it. So it's very clean and crisp, but you're going to get a high alcohol burst out of it. I think it's 8, I want to say. Yeah, 8.5. So it's a big boy. For those of you, if you're following at home and you have something comparable like a Belgian style triple, TRIPEL, one of those would also be comparable, although not quite the same. So this guy's kind of cool because it's one of those things, pardon me, that normally it's like wine tastes better in Paris. Guinness tastes better in Ireland, so I hear. Haggis tastes better in Scotland, and triples taste better in Belgium. I picked up several triples, which would be things like Westmalle triple. That's the big one for me that I've had here that are just like sipping on alcohol over here. You go to Belgium and you have them, and they have fruity notes to them, which is you don't normally get that. I find the same thing here with Duvel sometimes. So I haven't had one of these in a while, so bear with me here for a second. But even off the top, it's going to be like you get a lot more boozy notes from it. But it's good. It's good. It's boozy, has a bit of sweetness to it as well. Very effervescent, very clean, which is why I liken it to a Pilsner. It doesn't have the hops that a Pilsner would, but to me anyway, but a lot of flavor. Is anyone here ever had? I think I asked the question that I didn't watch the answers. Anybody here ever had Duvel? Care to comment? Yeah. So yeah. So you're familiar with it, but kind of a great example for me of a relatively unique Belgian style. It doesn't get a whole lot of people making them. Like not a whole lot of people make Belgian strong ales by themselves. You get a lot of sours, that kind of thing. Anyway, yeah. So that's why I picked Duvel. It's one of those things that it's good in Canada. It's probably better in Belgium if you can afford the $1,200 round trip airfare. It might be worth the trip. Yeah, Corona's not a thing. Yeah.
So how do you compare the Block 3 triple?
Three triple. Which one's the triple? What's it called?
Oh my goodness gracious! I'm looking at what the cheap gold from Block 3.
Cheap gold? That's a triple? Okay. I haven't had the Block 3 triple in a while, to be honest. Is that somebody asking that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of bringing it up because I remembered it being very similar to it.
Nice.
But several years ago, and I've had them both kind of around that time, and I was like, yeah, this is very similar.
Yeah, they definitely, like, Block 3 is an excellent Belgian style brewery. I would say that their biggest surprise for me was the double that they made, which it stands up to almost any Belgian double that I've had. Their quad is also decent, quite decent, quadruple that is. For me, it's a bit on the boozy side, which is understandable at like 12% or 11.8% or whatever, so it's understandable. But their Belgian ales, and for me especially their double, pardon me, it's a bit effervescent, are fantastic. Yes, so they're an excellent local brewery that I've been supporting since they came into existence about 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, definitely. I also, if anyone here is close to their fridge and they have some kind of stuff, I thought it'd be cool to talk about presentation and pairing. So a lot of places in Belgium, when you get a beer, but the beer is high enough quality, they will actually provide to you sometimes on the house a small bowl of peanuts, sometimes a small bowl with a toothpick of cheese, mustard, or like dill or pickled onions and things. So I made a small plate here. If anyone is close to a fridge and has things like pickles, mustard, or cheddar, even like a crappy cheddar, it's kind of a cool way to experience some of the later beers as well, because it's a pretty cool pairing that a lot of people don't really think about having, pickles with beer necessarily, but it goes really well, even with mustard. Like mustard and cheese and high alcohol beer are kind of a good pairing. I'm not sure if it's the fat bill. Any thoughts on that?
I'm all over the place on stuff like that. That's, I mean, the saltiness, the brine from the pickles really works well with a double.
Right.
And I was just laughed at, Katie wrote, she only buys top shelf cheddar. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay, I mean, you don't have to have low quality, but I'm just saying the stuff that I get for free in Belgian bars, I'm pretty sure it's not that high tier, because I've had high tier cheese and that's not it. But it doesn't have to be. It's got the fat content, and like the mustard, like a Dijon mustard with that it covers a lot of evils. And yes, high shelf, your top shelf mustard is definitely preferred, but not everybody can shop where Katie shops. So.
Now, I have never tried Dijon mustard. That's something new that I'm going to try.
Yeah, I would recommend it. I also, for those of you who actually want to try this sometime, if you're having some friends over, grab a couple of strong ales, head to Vincenzo's. They've got a great selection of like pickled onions. They have the sweet and or salty. I think I normally go with the salty personally, my personal prep, but either would work. And then just a decent quality Dijon and some moderate to okay to great cheddar in cubes, and just dunk the cheddar in the cheese. It sounds kind of gross or simple, but it is excellent, I would say, especially with a high alcohol beer. For those of you who want to up your game at that.
I gotta deal with this chat line for a second because it's getting out of control.
Okay.
Katie, I've had Dijon mustard. I've never considered doing Dijon mustard with a Duvel. And Terry and Emma, Cheese Whiz. I'm not 100% certain that would be a good move.
I mean, I've watched guys on cooking shows who refuse to give up their American cheese in their pasta sauce. Okay, so there are things to be said about low quality food that I'm gonna leave it there. I'll leave it there.
Now,
not quite. It's hard to put it on a toothpick. I'll say that though, Terry.
Would you recommend goldfish crackers?
Would I recommend them for a beer pairing, or in general?
For a beer pairing.
They're not sponsoring this event, so no, I would not.
So Cam.
Yeah.
I got a whole bunch of questions to ask you, but the one that comes to mind right away. Where did you have your first Belgian beer experience?
Belgian beer. The one that rings the what I would call my Trappist awakening, if you will, would be the time when me and my buddy picked up a bottle of Chimay Premier. Back when they came in the tall boys, or like really tall boys with glass. Back when people had standards and they would put their beer in the glass bottles with a cork. That's what I'm talking about, Bill. But people, men and women, that live by their own. So anyway, that's what is the fact that Chimay Premier existed 12 years ago. From then on, the one that really awoken my eyes to what Canadians could do in a similar vein would be Unibrew's 17. Has anybody ever heard of that beer, the D-Set? That guy back in the 2008 version, I want to say, although it could be, no, pardon me. 2007 version was the recipe varied noticeably between 7 and 8, and it's been different ever since then, if you ask me. 7 had almost like a currant / jam / preserved notes to it. After that, it was dominated by, to me, extreme oak aging, to the point where it's like, it's not pleasant to me. It was like it required aging for that. The 17 by Unibrew, which is probably you can't get anymore, and it's probably, if you do have it, it's getting probably close to its shelf life, is the one that really was like, wow, I'm drinking strawberry currant jam right now, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Very apt descriptions.
Okay.
The 17 was fantastic. First time I had it. You're right. Just that.
Hey, there you go. What year is that? 11. Okay. For me, it's too oaky. It's too oaky for me. We'll see.
And
Remember the beer called Terrible by Unibrew, Cam?
Of course. I have one downstairs aging right now. Yep.
I had one for many years, but it's been drank. But wasn't at all terrible.
When I first bought Terrible, I thought it was terrible. And then I bought 2 bottles because I was expecting it to be awesome. When I had it the next year, it was like, magnifique. So yeah, Unibrew was kind of like how I started experimenting with aging bottles as well. And that's the one that I really respect a lot of the stuff that they made, before they got kind of bought out by corporate guys. I'm sure they're still making good products. Like the Blanche to me tastes good still. I kind of lean towards supporting guys who are a bit smaller because I like that kind of mentality personally. But guys like Quebec has up until the last 5 or 6 years, I'd say, been at the forefront of Canadian brewing culture, just like what they've been doing. Guys like Bellwoods are coming in big now. Everyone's talking big about Godspeed, how the big innovations coming in from those guys. But I would say places like LTM, Three Musketeers, Dieu de Ciel out of Montreal, those guys are making top tier beers even like 10 years ago. Personally, it's my opinion, Bill. I can have my own opinion. Okay, it's 2021.
Cam,
yes,
the
sir.
show is all about opinion.
Sure.
What music would we find in your playlist right now, Cam?
Has anybody ever heard of these guys? Idols? No? Nobody? Okay. I'm a big fan of, lately I'm trying to go a bit more indie, I guess, independent style. So Idols are like a punk band out of Britain, out of, what's the city close to the Welsh border? Shoot, I forget. Anyway, punk, psych rock. There's a band called
Bristol.
Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. Yes, out of Bristol.
Thanks, Google.
Psych rock. Big fan of things like the West Coast Cali scene. Me and iPhone, aka Dennis, are kind of been sharing back and forth on bands like Wand. The OCs just came out with new stuff all the time. Just listened to a band called Fuzz. Some bands are doing live concerts right now. Live as in you can stream it with your friends from a distance, and then you get the recording the day after kind of deal. So a lot of cool bands in Cali are doing like live streamed concerts. So Fuzz is like a side project of a guy named Ty Segal, who I'm a big fan of. So those are the kind of things I've been kind of binging lately, that kind of style. So indie, a bit more psych based, but probably a bit more heavier / punky, if that makes sense. Anybody?
So
If you
Remy
like that
brings,
kind of stuff, check out Idols. They're really good.
Remy brings up an interesting point. What you pair with your beer is probably determined a lot by your mood. But then he goes on to say, probably with the beer you're drinking is being determined by your mood.
For me, it does. Yeah, definitely does.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those guys who is strictly devoted to pairing his beer by season. As you maybe have guessed by the fact that we picked two browns coming up next, two big browns that normally people would consider to be fall or winter beers. Like I'll drink a stout any day of the week kind of thing. So I'm a mood drinker for sure, Remy, as well. Yeah.
Well, you've heard me say it. You know, people ask me what I would drink in a wine or a beer or a scotch. It's like, well, tell me what I'm doing.
Yes.
So determines what I'm going to drink at that moment. So,
Yep. If you've been out biking, if you've been dealing with frustrating people, if you're at somebody's house who has a good scotch collection, these are reasons to drink to alter your drinkability.
Yeah. So which of the big browns are we starting with first?
We are going to go with the Chimay Bleu. That would be the Chimay Bleu, or Chimay Blue if you are American. So this guy, hopefully, if you're not Parks and you haven't been down this guy for the whole time so far, will be out of your fridge and warming a bit. We're going to go with a chalice style glass if you have one available. If you do not, a wine glass would be also excellent. If you don't have one of those, you can drink it out of the bottle, and I will not say anything. So this guy, I picked this guy, Bill, partly because of the story I told you earlier about the Chimay being kind of an eye opener into the world of Trappists kind of deal. And this, I think, this is their Mr. Holland's opus of what they make. I'm a fan of breweries that do what they do, and they leave it there. So some Trappist breweries make one beer. You know what you're gonna get. They make that one beer. They make it really well, and that's what they do. Chimay does regularly four. I think four. Three that are relatively well known. They have the white, the premier, the red label, which is the one that you used to get at the LCBO and tall things. A white label, which is a bit more like a blonde color, and then this guy, which is the big beefy 9%, which ages fantastic. For those of you who want to age, it's a fantastic aging beer. Super dark. The Trappists always recommend, first of all, why I respect them so much. I was telling Jen earlier, any beer that tells you on their label how they want you to drink it, I can get behind that. It goes to my respect for the Japanese. We must have rules and live by those rules. So Belgians, generally speaking, on their Trappists, like to give you a big, wide opening on the shape of the beer glass, so that you're hit with all the aroma, because there's going to be a lot in that. So I haven't tried one of these in a while, so bear with me for a second here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. So off the bat, if the temperature is pretty good right now, it's probably about 10 degrees or so. That kind of wakens up flavors. I'm getting a good dose of burnt caramel on that. A little bit of fruitiness at the very end as well. It's not just like harsh. There's a lot of sweetness to it. And it's also what I call a danger beer. It does not taste like 9%. You throw this down fast, all of a sudden you're like, where are my pants?
We need to address some of the conversation that's going on over in the chat line for a second.
Okay.
So first of all, Katie, the reason that they tell you not to drink beer out of a bottle, particularly in a lot of the imported beers, is you want to experience the full flavor of the beer, and that requires it to be open.
Also, there's the a lot of these beers we're drinking. Oh, shouldn't say that. I know several of these beers we're drinking tonight are what are called bottle conditioned as well. So they are fermented once in the fermenter, and then they are the yeast is reactivated in the bottle with a small amount of sugar, probably just like it's called priming sugar, that re-ferments in the bottle and conditions enhances the flavor as well as carbonates the beer. So it's not, a lot of them aren't as forced carbonated. You're not pumping CO2 into the beer. The actual the yeast themselves are carbonating the beer as well. That when the yeast die, they leave a residue, like their dead yeast cells at the bottom of the bottle, which actually people back in the day when you couldn't get yeast easily from from yeast banks or whatever, or like labs, you could actually harvest that as a home brewer and use that to pitch your. You can make your own chimay at home kind of thing with the yeast from the bottom of the bottle. So normally what you do is you pour about 5/6 of the bottle of beer out, swirl the rest of it out, and then dump it in over the top. So that's my short answer to that one, Bill. Hope you don't mind.
The short answer is great. Derek is patiently waiting for us to let him talk. And I think you and I should just keep having a conversation now.
That's what I'm here for, man.
Not possible, Bill. I can unmute myself. So I did something either ingenious or idiotic. I'm still trying to decide, but I took my beer and I took my funnel and I put the beer back into the bottle, swirled it around, and it's a little more wit beer like now. So
okay, yeah. Well, wheats in general have a lot of dead CO2 in them, so it's great for that. Yeah, Hefeweizens as well, German style. I will always swirl those. Always. You're gonna dump what looks like a bunch of crap into your beer, and sometimes it's been aging for a while, it'll just go down to the bottom and sit there. Less than ideal, obviously, but still, you definitely want to incorporate, and it should taste probably more yeasty or more bready, probably, I would say.
So bottom line, buy a funnel.
Bottom line, buy a funnel. Yeah, I mean that's also, I guess, a good mantra, I guess.
Derek, it just saved you from having Naomi annoyed with you for making a mess, okay?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess I don't know if you have any more questions for right now, Bill, or do we just keep talking about stuff? What do you want to do?
You're a wealth of knowledge. You can keep talking, or I can ask you some more questions.
All right, I'll just do a quick rant then. First off, for those of you who went to your fridge and got some cheap and/or expensive cheddar and some cheap and/or expensive Dijon, this would be a good time to start popping into that bad boy. Trappist, this is a Trappist ale. I like it because it has the Highlander effect. There can be only 6 when I started drinking. There are only 6 Trappist breweries in the world, 5 of whom were in Belgium. Trappist, it literally just means it's run by a brewery, not for profit. Anything that they make goes back either into community or the maintenance of their brewery. I kind of liked the whole elitist side of things. We are what we are. We do our thing, our limited things that we do very well, and we're not in it to try and make a whole lot of money. Chimay is the one that kind of crossed the Atlantic as far as being a bit more upping their production value and things, or their production levels. But when I first started drinking beer, I love being part of the elite club that only had 6 members. There's the 5 from Belgium, and then Le Trappe from Holland, which I actually, one of the ones I recommended if you couldn't find the Duvel. The Le Trappe was available, the triple. That guy, yeah. So I kind of like that. Since I first started drinking beer, by the way, our buddy Michael Jackson, when he wrote his book that was referenced earlier, there were only 5 Trappist ales. So now there are probably, I want to say 12 or 15 approximately. There's one in Austria. There's one in, I think somebody mentioned Spencer's out of the US. There's one in Italy even. I would say that they're all, the definition of them is how they operate their brewery for the most place, because like all Trappist ales are kind of like Abbey ales, but not all Abbeys are Trappist, if that makes sense. The kind of similar flavor profile you get under things like Floref, if you've heard of that, or Affligem, or things like that, but they're run as a profit brewery. So that's why I kind of picked a Trappist for tonight, because it's also a thing that when I was young, you could only get them from Belgium. Now you can get them from other countries as well, but back in the day, it's kind of relatively unique to that area, which is kind of cool. St. Bernardus is an Abbey ale, not a Trappist ale. Although the St. Bernardus yeast is the ones who carry the yeast, I'm pretty sure, for St. Sixtus, aka West Lettering. So those are the kind of guys who they're kind of linked together. West Lettering, by the way, if you guys have heard of that, it's the one you go to if you go to Bellwood's Brewery and you want to pay $45 for a bottle that's worth 3 or 4 euros. You can do that if you want. I've had it. It's a great double. It is equally on par with any other double I've had, if not slightly a bit better than some. It is not worth $35. I don't care where you're from. Fight me, bro.
If Jen's curious what the back end spicy tone is on the Chimay.
Good question. I do not know.
She thinks it's cloves. I don't have one, so I can't try it to tell you.
I would be surprised. For me, cloves are very, they kind of dominate the brew. They're very easy, like even with food, you know, like all of a sudden you go, like if you add 2 cloves to your dish, that's enough. If you add 3, it's too much, you know, that kind of thing. So cloves they're a bit of a hit or miss for me. A lot of guys who are making their Christmas beers use cloves not frugally enough, if you will. If there are cloves in this, I would be surprised. I think most of the off flavors come from candy sugar, which is like a burnt brown molassesy kind of like crystallized sugar that a lot of Belgians use both to up the alcohol level and up the inherent sweetness as well. So I think you get. This is me guessing, by the way. I don't know. I don't have the recipe. I don't know anybody who knows how it's brewed. Just the fact that cloves for me are quite polarizing, and that I normally don't like them. I would be surprised if they are in here.
And Jen, you could be picking up the taste of cloves in there for a particular reason. I haven't had Chimay in a long time, but the back end tone of cloves is very similar to burnt sugar.
Yeah, I think that might be it. It's like, it's whatever that burnt sugar is. There's some sort of spicy, crispy beer taste.
That's probably what you're picking up. It just gives you that reminiscence of a taste of cloves, even though it isn't cloves. So,
I mean, they could have cloves too, Jen. I'm not saying they don't. I would be surprised in this particular beer if they do. Yeah, like the bottle aging, like the re-fermentation, and the high sugar levels kind of really give it a complex flavor. That for me, I'm not always the best at parsing out what the actual flavors are, other than saying, me like, very nice, you know? So.
Well, Remy raises an interesting point. When you, with using a Belgian yeast, you do tend to get spicy flavors involved.
Sure.
Which,
yeah.
But not true spice flavors. You get the portions of it that remind you of that.
Right.
So Jen also asked, and maybe you covered it and I missed it, the difference between a Trappist ale and an Abbey ale.
The profit part.
The profit part, okay.
Run by monks kind of thing as well. Generally speaking, like an Abbey ale, there's a bunch of Abbey ales that you can get at the LCBO that I'm drawing a blank on right now. Actually, even something like this, perhaps. This is the first beer I ever had in Belgium because it was called Waterloo Dark, and it wasn't made in Waterloo. But the style is going to be of normally a non-hopped, probably about, let's go with 6 to 10%. Probably going to be of this color or ilk. Actually, that's the glass I'm using right now, if you can see that or not. It's called Maradsu. Have you heard of that? Maybe you've heard of it, maybe. Every once in a while, you can get them in the Belgian gift pack for the Christmas time kind of thing. Generally speaking, they're going to be of a comparable taste profile to a Trappist, but probably not run by monks, although they are called Abbey beers, and they're not usually non-profit or excessive profit.
So I'm curious, Cam.
Yeah.
To move a bit away from beers, who's your role model?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. My role model. That's a good question, Bill. I didn't know you were going to ask me this kind of stuff. I didn't prepare this kind of stuff.
Well, we didn't have a meeting yesterday to prepare for this.
We definitely did not. Role model, man. That's a good question. I would say that I would take examples from several people that I would respect certain facets of their existence. So let's take somebody like Russell Brand. He is not a guy I strive to be, I do think his command of the English language and his elocution is admirable. Things like that. So like there are aspects of people that I would probably emulate, or things I respect about certain people, but I wouldn't say that I have a one person who I am actively pursuing becoming that person, except of course for Bill.
Oh yeah, you just try that, man.
Yeah.
So which attributes in which person?
Well, let's see here. I would say respect for the importance of family, and is big in a lot of people in my family. So that goes with my some of my uncles are like that. Some of my aunts, I would get that from the importance of staying close to your family and recognizing the value in that. Things like that. My parents both instilled for me the importance of hard work, which I value as well. And a job well done kind of thing. See here. Boy. Musically, my role model used to be Tom York, because he's a guy that I used to want to be. I still like Radiohead a lot. He's the lead singer, by the way, for Radiohead, in case you guys are unaware. I don't really have a musical role model, a guy I'd like to emulate these days, but I have a lot of people I respect in that industry. Guys who are like doing it themselves, I can respect that a lot. Guys like Steve Albini, if you've ever heard of him, he's the former, I want to say, guitarist for Big Black, but now he does a lot of recording, and he's a guy who records. He recorded, for example, In Utero from Nirvana, if anyone's ever heard of that, but he doesn't take royalties from the sales of the records. So he takes his fee for the recording, and then that's it. And I think it's kind of crazy that he's actually still able to be alive and doing his job, but he's worked with some of the best bands in the world, I would say, but I can respect his ethic for that. So I'm not sure if that's going a bit way too far off topic, Bill, but things like that.
It's just learning a little bit more about the person I'm interviewing.
Okay, yeah, I really like DIY people. I like people who don't take advantage of the system. They don't have to. Well, they don't have to. And yeah, people who work hard to achieve their goals are things I can get behind.
Yep. Last beer.
Last beer, right on. We are going with, for those of you who are fortunate enough, hold on. My cooler's empty. Ooh. Those of you who are fortunate enough to get to the LCBO while they still had it, we're going with the Rodenbach Grand Cru. Ba-bam! Everybody here managed to get that? Yeah, the booth behind me is not for this. It's for a different. That's for a different episode. Don't worry about it. It's for that's for liquors with Louis. He's my my roommate. Don't worry about it. Okay, so we're going with the Rodenbach Grand Cru. Alternatively, if you couldn't find that one and you're able to get this guy, the Duchesse de Bourgogne, if you can get that one, that's great as well. Either of them will work. I decided to go with a Flemish red for the last beer of the night. Why, you ask, Bill? Good question. The answer is because I'm trying to go for styles today that are extremely definitive of Belgium. You can get sours almost anywhere these days. You can get wild ferments at a lot of places. Not a whole lot of people make Flemish reds. This is a Flemish red. So it's kind of like brown in the glass a bit, but generally speaking, it's a redder hue. These guys are 12, just to go a little bit of history. Sorry for those of you getting bored. About 12 month aged in oak cask kind of deal. Made with the malts kind of give it the color. You're gonna have a little bit of sweetness to it, probably a little bit of sour because it does have a lactobacillus, I believe, kind of thing going on with it as well. Give me 1 second here. Oh, baby. Okay, yes, we got that going on. So yeah, it's gonna be, I call it the balsamic of beers, if you will. This guy is going to be aged, like I said, 12 months in oak. When they're finished with that, they would blend that with new beer to give it kind of the effervescence. A very similar process to those of you who are aware of lambic and or goose, the only word that has 2 U's and 2 E's, I think, in it. It's a blend of lambic style beers. So this is kind of same kind of process goes into the Flemish Reds as well. Kind of tart on a good day, a little bit of sweetness as well. It looks like balsamic has kind of both notes going on. It's kind of a relatively unique style. Definitely not for everybody. So if you didn't get one, and if you don't, if this is description is already turning you off, maybe don't ever buy one. But you should also just buy one because give it a try. Maybe you like it. Who knows, right? Oh, and that is a delight.
And I've actually used that in cooking because of that sweet tartness that comes through.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, it's the same thing. You can use really good quality balsamic, the kind that Katie would buy probably, to pour that over ice cream even. It's got enough going on that you can use it as a dessert. So so this guy, I picked this guy as well because it is one of my favorite memories of a bar that I went to in Belgium. As I've frequented several memorable bars in Belgium based on the time requirements. I think that might be a chat for a different day or perhaps in person sometime. But I used to go to Belgium. I've been there twice, both times for beer. The first time was also an attempt to recreate the plot line of In Bruges, which I would get behind anyone doing as a method of spending a week in Bruges. Fantastic movie. And I literally have done all the stupid stuff that Colin Farrell didn't want to do. I did it all. Amazing. Anyway, so my first time, that's one of my, anyway, a little bit of a dog leg over back to going to a bar that I went to in Antwerp. Me and my buddy Johan went there. We wanted to just go to a place we'd never been. We went to, we always try to find old pubs that have been there for, 3 times the age of Canada, that kind of stuff when possible. The wood there smells like 1,000 bottoms have been filling its seats for, decades kind of thing. It's great. You can't beat it. Their tap lists are always fantastic. It's all glass, wood, and maybe old iron if you're lucky, that kind of stuff. Stone, the stone has grooves in it from where the feet have been falling on it for, centuries, that kind of place. So we found this place called, anyone here speaks Dutch, please don't get too angry. I'm going to call it Patersvetje, Petersvaetje, which is not a native English speaker's in my wheelhouse of pronunciation. Anyway, so we went to this bar. They're the kind of place that has, they got their taps, they sell their crappy little pilsners and stuff. They're all the locals and stuff. And then us high rollers who come here just for Belgian beers, they got a tap list, a bottle list as long as your arm, with the glassware behind the bar, each paired to the actual product. It's a beer drinker's, what would the equivalent be? A Taj Mahal, I guess. I don't know, a Mecca, if I could use. Anyway, so we go there. They have the glass rinser that has the low detergent soap, so you they dip the glass when you're ready to serve it. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so we go there one day. It's fantastic. We by random task and or odd luck, we picked up this guy off the list. I had never heard of it. I didn't know anything about Flemish Reds. The label sounded kind of cool. The name was like, okay, it's in French. I like French. No idea what it's going to taste like. We've had it and we loved it. The Duchesse de Bourgogne. If you have had that, it's like this guy as well. The Rodenbach Grand Cru, going to be super balsamic-y. I think it might be a bit sweeter than the Rodenbach a little bit, but just like, it's like something we've never tried before. We loved that place so much. We went back there the next day, and the barkeep was the bartender later was there, and we went to the bartender. She came up to the table with her binder. Of course, she speaks perfect English because she's in Europe. Of course, so why wouldn't you speak English? And we're like, hey, yeah, we came here a couple of days ago. We had the Duchesse de Bourgogne, and we're looking for something comparable to that. And this is where I met the first girl I've never loved before. She asked the question that I've never been asked before any time in my life. Do you prefer sweet sour or sour sweet? And we were like, because no one had ever asked such an in-depth question of us before, that I immediately, of course, fell in love, never talked to her ever again. And then we had a Lindemann's beverage, which was fantastic. Unfortunately, I'd already tried it before. So the result of the actual beer she selected for us based on our choice, I believe, of sweet sour was a Lindemann's product, which is fantastic. But I had never been asked that before, let alone by somebody who was kind of cute in glasses who smoked cigarettes on her breaks. That's my story about Patersvece in Antwerp, which I recommend trying out sometime if you're ever in the area.
We have to go back to a question further back that I completely missed. You talking about the glassware on the wall struck me. If you were trapped on a deserted island, how many different styles of beer glass would you need?
I'm an elitist, but I'm also a pragmatist, I guess. This beer glass that I picked for the final beer tonight is my go-to all-around beer glass choice. And is this guy here. Technically, it's a Bellevue, it's a creek glass, technically. It's like a mini chalice. It has, yes, almost everyone's using these here. It has the nice bowl. It has like the quaff that kind of go up the middle, the kind of almost like a brandy glass, you know. You can consolidate the aroma in. It's good for stouts. It's good for anything. I would use this glass for anything. So this would be my answer. Alternatively, I would go with I would probably pick a wine glass because it's going to be equal kind of idea. Like the shape is comparable. I would probably only pour a quarter or a third full all the time to make sure you get your nose in there. You know, you can smell all those sour notes. Is that sweet sour or sour sweet? We don't know.
Derek wants to know if you were at the Trappist when you were in Bruges.
The bar, Le Trappist, is that a bar? I was not.
Go there if you get a chance to go back. It was I went to the Potter's Gat, or what you know, I don't know how to pronounce it. It was cool.
Potter's Gat. Yeah, I've been there.
That was cool, but Le Trappist was amazing. It was just this dungeon-looking basement place with old like Napoleon-era artifacts and
It
just
does sound great.
like an unbelievable list of beer and many things on tap. And
my favorite bar in Bruges actually
awesome
is
place.
La Gare, if you've ever heard of that one.
I don't recognize that name.
Stemne de Gare. It's in a back alley. It's hard to find, and they have their own La Gare triple there, which is 11%. They make it only there, and they only serve you 3 glasses per day maximum, which I can respect. So Bruges is full of excellent bars. I will definitely check out the Trappist next time I'm there, because I'm like you. Potter's Gatche, whatever it's called, was okay. Did not hold a candle to La Gare personally. So
it was a little studenty, but it had like a good selection of beers. So funny story from when I was in Bruges. You know how anal I am with my Untapped, and certainly Terry and Emma know.
Yes, I am aware of that. Yes.
I had a few too many in Belgium, in Bruges, as I tend to do. And there was a beer I had at the end of the night that I got at a convenience store on a corner.
Yep.
It had a red and white label. And I could picture it the next day. I forgot to check it in. I drank it on my walk home. So the next morning we were having lunch at some fries and stuff at the place. And Naomi, who was pregnant at the time, was trying to help me figure out what I drank. So she got on Reddit and got the Reddit detective to figure out what beer I drank based on the corner store I bought it at and the colors of the label. And it worked. So I now have to check in.
Well, Budweiser's pretty similar all over the world, you know.
Wasn't Budweiser, Bill. I don't remember what it is. I'd have to dig into my Untapped to figure it out, but it was a miracle of the internet.
See,
I don't know the first thing about Reddit.
I prefer old school Untapped. I've got a beer diary here of the beers that I take with me when I go traveling that I record the names of, and then I write down, which ones are new, which ones are worthwhile repeating in the future. So this is kind of like my version of Untapped because social media is the default.
I used to have a notepad in my back pocket, but I like that I can download my data now. So
yeah, it's convenient. I get it. I don't know. For me, this is where I go. But yeah, I get it.
I love it, Cam. I love it that you record it. I love it that you record it manually that way.
Dude, I've got like my second. So our first trip to Belgium, we did okay. We did 59 beer that trip. The second one, we did 83, 54 of which were unique and brand new to us. So that for me was like That was a good trip, man. That's a good trip, Bill. I'm telling you.
Did a trip with Sim and Miro a couple of years ago. I had 100 check-ins in 5 days. Not a single one was a repeat.
That's a dangerous trip, man.
Oh, I was hungover for 5 days. So.
Getting into quad territory there, man. Gee.
Cam, I'm curious.
Oh.
If you had the opportunity to brew the beer or spend a day talking about beer with someone, who would that be?
Okay, I thought you might ask me this one. I was ready for it. Okay.
Good.
I would, because of the unique circumstances surrounding their production, I would choose to go to either a place that I didn't understand the language, or a monastic place just to watch how they do it. What came to mind, though, however, immediately after that, was Caracol. Has anyone ever heard of Caracol? Caracole. It's an Abbey Parks, Abbey style brewery out of Belgium. They are one of the only ones that I know in the world. At least they used to. Back when I was over there, when I was deep into this Belgian scene, they were still using wood-fired pots as their boiler. So trying to get hot spots, or you're worrying about hot spots on the kettle, you're using wood to control the fire. Even if I don't speak the language, I like to go to some place like that and just watch what they do, probably. Not because of the actual people, I don't know who the hell they are, but because of that kind of old school artisanal style. Some of the best times I've had lately in breweries have been working with Wellington, going there and brewing with Marv. Having Greg, for those of you who don't know, Greg Brow, great guy from the area, he'd come in to help as well. Marvin Dick, you've had on here, I want to say twice, but it could be thrice. Around that anyway. Great guy who knows his ish. He's got a cool beer knowledge. He's also a great teacher, because he used to be a teacher. He's great to talk to you about things like beer. So I think he's one of the guys I really like. I've liked brewing with in the past, So those are my two answers, if that works for you.
That's a fantastic answer. That's exactly the way I would have pictured it. I don't care about the people. I am so interested in that style of brewing beer, the old way.
Well, man, like cooking anything on wood, like wood-fired pizza takes more skill than anything I can do. You know what I mean? So let's just watch the masters work,
Cam, I want to thank you for sharing your Belgian beer knowledge with us and your stories. It's always a pleasure to have you on. It's always been fun. Thank you, Cam.
Thank you, Bill.
And remind everybody, next week, Taylor Robertson, a Kickoff alumni, is going to be on, talk about what she's working on in her quest to go to the Miss World Canada pageant.